Excellent. Well, happy Friday afternoon. I am Scott Pierce from the Premium Cigar Association, and this is a very special Facebook Live, YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live that we're doing today for, I hope, anybody that is even on the periphery of the cigar industry is out celebrating right now. I am absolutely celebrating, still celebrating with another good premium cigar after the tremendous news that we've gotten this week. We wanted to be able to bring our good champion litigator Michael Edney on here for just a little bit to discuss the ramifications of what all this means, maybe answer some questions as it relates to, well, where do we go from here, or even how did we get here? And so I'm joined by immediate past president of the PCA board, Greg Zimmerman, and with Josh Haversky, obviously the head of all of our federal and government affairs here. One interesting thing is Greg, you have been doing this for very long. I mean, you were there from the outset, considering obviously, as secretary on the executive committee, and then all the way through, you've been on this executive committee all the way through to this fruition at this point. In terms of that, before we dive in, I think to the kind of really thick legalese with Mr. Edney here, Esquire. Just kind of give your perspective on that, just from where we started to where we are now, and just from IPCPR like through to PCA, and just all the amount of everything else that's gone on and all those that you worked with throughout all of this. Just a quick perspective over the past 7 years.
Yeah, I can remember coming on to the PCA board back in, I think 2009 was my first year, and we were just dealing with S-chip and realizing that the operational aspect of then RTDA, then IPCPR, now PCA, had to change drastically. We knew that we were going to have to get into the advocacy game. We're all novices at that, and we all had to learn very quickly. Then just real highlight, the Tobacco Control Act was enshrined by Congress. We started advocating Congress, telling them why this wasn't applicable to our industry. The FDA proceeded, completely ignored, directive, even though the Congress we had 233 signatures, I think it was, on the 112th Congress, stating that was not their congressional intent. But FDA decided, for whatever reason, maybe because of the mindset of the people in control at CTP, that they were not going to listen. They were going to move forward. So our next option was litigation. I can remember 2015-ish, we started to coalesce between some of the associations to form a legal committee. We then decided that we needed to interview law firms. We did that. We were kind of set in one way, and then our last interview was a guy by the name of Mr. Edney, Michael Edney, and it was a unanimous consensus that this should be our guy. He very quickly demonstrated that he knew how to navigate the complexity of litigation as it pertains to tobacco issues, and we were the successors because of that early decision to go with him and his law firm to guide us through this. And it's been a long, hard fight, 7 years. There's a lot of people to thank. There's everybody participated in some manner. Whether it was financially or whether it was commenting on different aspects of the lawsuit. But as we could see yesterday, a very historic day for the industry, very good day. We prevailed, and it's not over. We have a long road to hoe. I think there's going to be obviously more lawsuits going down with different components of yesterday's ruling, and some other things that are kind of brewing as we speak. But we know that we can successfully navigate that now, and I think we have some good people. I often kid, I sat on this legal committee, and at one point I think I was one of the only non-attorneys on there. And I remember having two computers, one that I was on screen during a meeting, and then one where I was Googling what Chevron deference meant and what all these complex cases. And I think I could probably I might be able to pass the bar in a few states in the country now, but so we had to learn, and learn we did.
Good stuff. Well, yeah, absolutely. It was clear that as impressed as you were with Michael Edney at the start, understanding that slid right into it and deep understanding of it. Obviously, that decision paid off in spades. Michael, right now, if you were to retire as a baseball hitter, you'd be even above Ted Williams. I mean, you're batting 1,000 at this point, sir. So, um, so high praise, but very, very much deserved. And I had the opportunity to have a front row seat to be in these courts and listen, and so it was fantastic. And but just wanted to kind of get your perspective on this. Just again, making sure everyone's kind of up to speed in terms of, because we've heard about different lawsuits, but you are our lead litigator in every single lawsuit. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of going back and giving this historical aspect of the different lawsuits, what they mean, leading us to this point here where we got this decision this week. And then we'll kind of go on from there about what does this actually mean.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. And it has been a great honor to represent the premium cigar industry and the Premium Cigar Association in this fight. Greg and Scott and Josh have really had their sleeves rolled up, and they're in there on the legal details as much as anybody else. Law degree or not, if they ever get tired of this cigar thing, they can come practice law with me anytime. But that's been their life for the last 7 years, and appropriately so, because the FDA's regulation posed an existential threat to the premium cigar industry, its retailers and manufacturers. I'm going to talk about that. Kind of the dimensions of that in a second, but there's no question that Wednesday was a great day for handmade premium cigars. It was a great day for the mom and pop corner store tobacconists that have educated consumers about these products for generations and have been there ready to provide them and in the varieties that folks want. It was a great day for the family-owned businesses that have practiced the art of making these cigars for decades and centuries. And it would have been very different if this FDA regulation was allowed to come into effect and to stand. Just to give you an overview of what happened, it doesn't take long because it's very simple. On Wednesday, Judge Maida ended the FDA's regulation in premium cigars in its entirety. There's nothing left in terms of FDA regulation in premium cigars. If the FDA ever wants to stand up a regulation for premium cigars again, it'll have to start a long process of comment and rulemaking completely over. And in this case, it will have to be just for premium cigars. I mean, I think one of the things that happened to premium cigars is that the FDA kind of used an economy of scale, kind of a mass production process to stand up one big rule for all tobacco products. So, why not? Let's throw premium cigars in there. If they want to do it again, they have to do it for premium cigars especially, and focus on those products and their characteristics. And I think if you look at what Judge Maida said in this 13-page opinion Wednesday, and his opinion last summer in 2022, it'll be very hard for the FDA ever to try to throw premium cigars again into the same requirements as cigarettes and other mass-produced tobacco products, because frankly, that's what this regulation was built for. It was built for massive companies with millions of cigarettes rolling off the assembly line, having the FDA look at each one of those products, with millions and hundreds of millions of units, made sense. Health warnings for those products, I won't say whether they made sense or not, but there's at least more of a question there than there was for premium cigars. That's going to be very hard for the FDA to ever come back and do again. They're going to have to come up with something that's more tailored if they ever try, if they ever decide that it's worth it, if they ever want to make the investment for this small segment of the tobacco industry. I mean, it's a small segment of the tobacco industry, but it's the biggest part of our lives, right? It's the biggest part of the PCA's life. It's the biggest part of the retailer's life. It's the biggest part of the manufacturer's life. And I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to have helped those industries through this. It was nearly a 7-year-long fight leading to this day. I got involved right around Christmas 2016. Greg was there. And this day on Wednesday never would have happened without the courage and leadership of the Premium Cigar Association and its current and previous leaders, from Craig Cass, to John Anderson, to Greg Zimmerman, to Scott Regina, and then to Josh Pierce, Josh Shabrisky, and Scott Pierce, who are on the line here. The staff level have been pushing this forward. Many of the bigger players in this industry did not want to invest in or be as aggressive against the FDA, and they pressured the PCA to back off and go in different directions. These men that I just referred to said no, and they did so under tremendous financial pressure. They would not change course, and with their manufacturer partners, and I think they know who they are, their perseverance led to this victory and this liberation from FDA regulation on Wednesday. Yeah, how did we get here? We've taken a very strategic course throughout this fight, working carefully to convince the courts that premium cigars were different and that the FDA did a poor job of justifying this devastating regulatory scheme for these special products. And in the earliest days, you'll recall that the rule came down in 2016. There was a presidential election, and President Trump took office in early 2017, and then working together over the first 6 months of the Trump administration, we were able to convince the Trump administration and its FDA to delay some parts of this rule, and that led to a staggered approach to this litigation, where to get the court's focus, we structured our challenges to attack the biggest parts of the regulation where enforcement was imminent. And the first big part of this regulation that rolled on was in 2017. The Trump administration refused to delay. One of the things they wouldn't delay was the beginning of the massive government warnings that would have covered 30% of our heirloom boxes. And we challenged that and ultimately convinced Judge Maida that those warnings made no sense for premium cigars. Here, Judge Maida, for the first time, began to understand and to hold that premium cigars are used differently than other tobacco products. And I think the key there is only a fraction of our consumers use the product daily. The statistics showed that the significant health effects of tobacco use come with daily or more use. And here we were plastering these boxes to go after the potentially the usage patterns of just almost an infinitesimal sliver of our consumer base. The court appropriately thought that was too much. That was inappropriate. That wasn't correctly sized. That wasn't tailored to what premium cigars today. And the FDA just really hadn't shown the massive negative health effects from this typical use that would be needed to justify this incursion on how we talk to consumers through our boxes. They're essentially going to take over our boxes and say, thanks for your property here. We're going to use them to put out the FDA's message. Judge Maida said no to that for premium cigars. While that was happening, as it turns out, he had a previous ruling that upheld the warnings for all cigars, so not just premium cigars. That was up on appeal in the DC Circuit. We won that case with the PCA support and really raised the bar for ever putting these warnings on these boxes. That require a high level of justification to make them so they're tailored and appropriately sized for issues that come apart. So that would have changed the look of our retail stores. Those warnings would have been festooned all across your product displays. On all those pictures that the manufacturers send you that are beautiful pieces of art about their products that you hang up in your stores. They would have been covered with massive government warnings, and of course every box would have the same thing. It would have turned your typical retail store into kind of a menagerie or of government warnings.
Yeah, we look like the duty-free shops over in Europe, essentially.
Yeah, worse, because those are only on the boxes. I mean, these warnings would have been on just kind of every fixture,
Everything.
piece of
Yeah.
furniture that you had, and display and picture that you had in your stores. And we know we all have those, right? And they're beautiful, and they would not have been if this rule had come into effect. They probably would have hit the dumpster, and stores would have looked very different, like a pharmacy rather than any place you wanted to be.
Right.
Then in 2022 came something called pre-market review. I mean, this was one of the silliest of all. This would have required a scientific study of each variety of premium cigars, like you would have for a prescription drug. Like Ozempic had to go through to, in order for everybody to be shooting them into their belly to lose weight and probably a third arm in the process, right? That's that long process of studies would have gone through for each variety of premium cigars, which is just crazy, right? Because one of the reasons we have a premium cigar industry is because we have variety, right? That there are different sizes and different blends, but frankly, they're all the same from a health perspective, right? They're made of all natural tobacco. The studies show that they're generally used the same, and there was just no justification for having each of these varieties go through this drug-like approval process. We challenged that in 2020, and again, Judge Maida, I think very appropriately, said that the FDA failed to grapple with the different characteristics of premium cigars. This is part of what we're talking about in the moment. I mean, PCA and others, way back in 2014, had proposed a different approach to dealing with premium cigars, and the FDA just kind of ignored it. And these are the seeds that the PCA plants that bear fruit in the event that the FDA ever decides to go after us. That's why you always need to be completely all over what the FDA is proposing and bring a rigorous approach to going after their proposals and commenting on them and advocating against them and for a more measured approach. Because if they ever go in the wrong direction, we need that if we have to go to court. So these two fights, with the focus and urgency that the imminent enforcement of pre-market review and the warnings brought to the court's consideration, set the table for the court's ruling Wednesday. The court said that the FDA ultimately bungled the decision to throw premium cigars into regulation in the first place. And this is because way back in 2014, the PCA put before the FDA what's called Option 2. And Option 2 was a proposal to exempt premium cigars from regulation. And the FDA actually put that in proposed rule and said, look, people have said this is something we should look at. There's a variety of questions that we should chase down to decide whether to pursue it. And then when it came to the final rule, it kind of threw its hands up a little bit and said, you know what, I think we just want to regulate these guys. And that's what the FDA, that's what Judge Maida said. It's like, look, maybe you could have rejected Option 2, but you had to explain it. And they did things like say there's no evidence that there are different patterns of usage for premium cigars that are relevant to health effects. That's what they said. Well, that's not true. The reason we knew it wasn't true because organizations like the PCA and Cigar Rights of America put in their comments before the agencies study and evidence that said, look at how these products are used. It's not like a chain smoker of cigarettes that's blowing through 4 packs a day. These are used very occasionally. The evidence shows that somewhere between 2 and 4% of premium cigar consumers use the product daily or more. And when you match that up against the evidence the FDA had about statistically significant health effects, that you needed to use more than 2 a day, and that's the analysis that the court ran through. They said, look, you can't say there's no evidence of different patterns of usage. It was right before you in the comments. And maybe there's an explanation of how you get to this regulation despite that evidence, but you got to provide the explanation. For some reason in this country, a reason I never really understood, and I think we in the Washington legal business, the conservative Washington legal business, are trying to correct. We have these administrative agencies that have enormous power over our lives, right? I mean, they can affect every piece of our livelihoods. And right now, the only check that we have on them, you would think that if we were going to destroy the premium cigar industry, Congress should make that call, or elected representatives. No, there's some guy you have never met, nobody ever voted for, and probably the president of the United States doesn't even know the name of, right? He decides, right, that premium cigars essentially should be destroyed. And the only thing that we can do in the courts now is say, well, if you're going to make that decision, you really got to explain yourself. You have to deal with the evidence that people are bringing to you. You have to chase down all the arguments. Here, with regard to premium cigars, it was phoned in and it didn't happen. And the reason we were able to make that argument is because the PCA and the CRA set the table. So on Wednesday, he finished things off. This is a decision that he made in 2022, but he was unsure of the remedy. The FDA was asking kind of for a free do-over to keep us regulated, kind of forever, while they decided maybe go back and spackled up over their mistakes. And he said, no, the mistakes are too serious, and it's just too unfair to keep these folks regulated. In fact, it's been unfair that we've had to spend the last half decade in regulation. So he rejected the FDA's request for kind of a free second chance, and he freed our manufacturers and retailers and consumers from the devastating burden of this regulation. And I think it's impossible to understate the significance of this decision. This regulation was an existential threat to the premium cigar manufacturers and retailers of this country. Now, perhaps a few of the largest manufacturers could have survived this regulation, but they would have survived with only a handful of varieties that they could afford to put through this pre-market review process, and then there would be little reason with that kind of low amount of variety for anybody to visit our stores to see what is new, to hold and try them. I was convinced that if the regulation stood, what was left of the premium cigar industry would have been purchased at very, very high prices by a click of a mouse, in somebody's den, than ever in a retail store again. Because it's really, if you already know the 17 premium cigars that you can still buy, I mean, why would you ever go into a store? The reason that people go into stores is because of the variety of our industry, and that would have been ended by the FDA's regulation. So this was a great victory for the industry. Now, having said that, I want to be clear what we're talking about here. On Wednesday, Judge Maida ended the Food and Drug Administration's regulation of premium cigars. But there's a lot of alphabet soup in this country. There's all sorts of federal agencies and state governments that have their own regulations, right? And the PCA has been leading advocacy about making those regulations sensible. That's a process that they're still going to go through. Those are regulations that we still need to live with. But the reason why the PCA invested so much in taking out the FDA's regulation is that was a regulation, I think, that could not be lived with, right? That would have changed premium cigars forever, and that kind of kill shot to the premium cigar industry has been ended. That existential threat to the way we do business today, Judge Maida put a stop to that. Now, there's still work to be done on that too. I don't think the government should, but the government can appeal this decision to a higher court, like the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court. We'll see whether that happens sometime within the next 60 days. And there's still other threats out there. And, I guess I bring myself back to a story I told in the beginning of all this. We would not have won this case if there hadn't been a PCA asking for option 2, the exemption of premium cigars from this massive rule back in 2014, when this thing was proposed and when the FDA took comments on it, right? We would not have won this lawsuit if these associations had conscientiously put the evidence of different patterns of usage in the record, and the FDA had then stumbled over it, right? That if that hadn't happened, if somebody like Scott Pierce and Josh Apresky and Greg Zimmerman weren't fly specking all of these proposals coming out of these agencies. There's frankly, by the time they called me, there was nothing probably that could be done to save the patient, right? It would have been stage 4. It's not, not something that we could turn around. And so that just underscores the importance of the PCA's continued efforts. This is not an area where you can take your eye off the ball. I know these 3 men here on the call today are not going to let that happen. And I think it's very important that the members of the PCA and the folks who support it don't take their eye off the ball either. We need to have the support financially and otherwise to keep pressing ahead and make sure nothing like this ever happens again. And if it does, that we have the best tools and evidence and arguments available. If we have to go back in the court and challenge it, we can do so and replicate this result. But I am hopeful today that the FDA was the worst thing that was facing this industry, and today they have encountered a significant setback.
Yeah, it's what you talk about as far as the shops were concerned, and obviously from day one when I got here discussing this, even as I was going through just the interview process, it was brought up, of course, about really to your point is safeguarding the culture of the retail stores and lounges where people gather and appreciate this. And even just over the last few years of looking at this, where the culture of the industry is at, and people are passionate about the cigars. They're passionate about the way that they're made. They're passionate about the craft and the culture surrounding it, the legacy and the heritage of it all. And that would have all been gone. It just from the stroke of a bureaucrat's pen, that would have all been gone because of this regulation. It would have turned, just as you talked about, it's a sterile pharmacy environment to go. And this is not a commodity that people enjoy. This is very much this aspect of this experience and engaging with the product. It's very much engaging with it in a way that is social, it is cultural, and it has far-reaching implications in terms of how people engage socially with it. And that would have been eradicated, which is, again, one of the prime directives of the reasons why, as the PCA as a retailer organization, was so gung-ho about this, and obviously partnering with the CRA and the manufacturers on that side, who saw it obviously for their side of things about being able to produce folks like they talked about this as a cottage industry. Each one is handmade. There's a lot of creativity and passion, just like it is with wine, that goes into making these blends. So that would have all been eradicated. So it's been incredibly rewarding. I came into this kind of as it was getting going, but it's been incredibly rewarding having gone through this entire process to get to this point. In terms of kind of where we're at now, and in terms of expectations, I don't necessarily want to ask you about a crystal ball because I know lawyers hate crystal balls. But in terms of looking at it, it goes back to obviously where it was previously regulated, which was under the Agricultural and Tobacco Tax Department under Congress. So in terms of where we're at right now, what can we potentially expect in terms of how business is going to go forward and how we ought to operate right now? Because it's not the Wild West. We are still regulated. There are still state laws that exist out there. So any state law like Tobacco 21, et cetera, all of these other things are kind of all out there. So what can we tell our retailers and for others that are listening right now, how do we now kind of move forward now that we're in this kind of squishy realm?
And Scott, sorry to jump in here. I actually got to catch a flight. We're doing a state event on Monday for 100 state legislators. So perfect segue there. I just wanted to say that, Michael, congratulations. Thank you for your leadership on the litigation. Scott's question, I think, is really spot on. What else exists in the apparatus, but also kind of in layman's terms, if you could let us know what the ramifications are for manufacturers, for retailers, and for consumers in real terms.
Yeah, sure. Now, as Scott and Josh mentioned, we still have regulations that apply to premium cigars at the state and the federal level. As a matter of fact, if you read page 12 of Judge Maida's opinion, that's one of the things that provided him with some comfort that, he is getting rid of a layer of regulation, a very onerous one, but it's not as if these products are, completely unregulated. I think it's very important for the premium cigar industry to continue, and they have under the leadership of the people on this call and otherwise, to act very responsibly. I mean, we don't sell to kids. We don't market our products to kids. And that's the kind of stuff that gets you regulated, right? And the fact that we've never done that we are such a responsible industry is one of the reasons why we were able to provide the courts with comfort that they could lift this FDA regulation and the sky wouldn't fall because as the judge said over and over again, there was no evidence of improper conduct. There was one point in the opinion, the FDA said, geez, if we don't have this regulation, maybe there will be all sorts of misleading advertisements from the premium cigar industry about their health effects or things like that. And he said, well, show me the evidence that that's ever happened, right? I mean, that's a solution in search of a problem. The converse of that is we have to work hard not to be a problem that needs a solution, right? And I think that's something very important to keep in mind. For manufacturers and retailers today, there's a phalanx of regulatory requirements that came out of the FDA regulation. Obviously, the warnings and pre-market review were very important, but there were bans on free sampling, which is frankly designed to keep manufacturers of cigarettes from handing them out at bars and things like that to young people. Well, that's not what we're doing. When our customers come in and there's something new, it's like, well, I might buy a box of this, but I want to give it a shot, right? It's a $300 investment, right? Let's
right.
let me take it out let me sit in one of these chairs and take it out for a test drive. And
sales reps being able to provide samples to cigar store owners and staff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't go to cigar shops all the time. I was in one yesterday in Dallas, and I think the woman wanted to give me a few free cigars, but she had to think about it for a second, right? Whether that was actually legal, right? And so that's something that's going to change. There's all sorts of tedious paperwork that the manufacturers had to push out. That's going to change. That burden is going to be lifted. The manufacturers paid, and I know passed along to retailers, and I know passed along to consumers, tens of millions of dollars in user fees every year, which frankly were being used to subsidize the regulation of cigarettes and e-cigarettes. That's going to change, right? So there's going to be, not only has this existential threat been removed, but there's a lot of kind of day-to-day life things for retailers and manufacturers that are going to change for the better. But having said that, again, we don't market our products to kids and we don't sell them to kids. That selling them to kids is illegal in every state in this country. Marketing them to kids is a bad idea, right? And the young folks, we don't do it. We need to be careful to keep not doing it. That's the kind of stuff that gets you signed up for one of these big FDA regulations that folks are really not going to like.
There you go. Jay just told you next time you're in Dallas, got to go to Blue Smoke or the Ash, and you got free samples there from Mr. Jay Davis.
Well, keep that in mind. I got to go down there I got to go down there every 2 weeks for this case I have. So.
Oh, well, all right. I think Jay will continue to roll out the hero's welcome for you. Greg, any last questions before we wrap this up? I know, Michael, you're very busy, so I appreciate you taking some time out of your Friday afternoon here. But Greg, any follow-up comments or questions on that before we let the fine folks get back to their Fridays?
No, I don't think so. As I said in my opening remarks, I think there's a lot of people to thank, a lot of associations to thank. CRA was our partner through this. CAA helped in their way, and we certainly were we're in the thick of it, from day one. And I think Michael was spot on. With these alphabet soup agencies, that's our challenge now. I'm not going to get geeky here as far as the law is concerned, but Article 1 of the Constitution is the people. That's the legislature. Article 2 deals with the executive branch. Article 3 is the judiciary. There's no article that says that the FDA is there to create and pass down different laws. It's the Congress's job, it's the people's job.
Yeah.
And I think the Congress has kind of abdicated its power, and in essence has now made the executive branch the sole power entity in that triad. That's who appoints these directors. So who's ever at the helm at the White House has the power to put XYZ in front of as commissioner to the FDA to promulgate whatever rule they want. They pass these massive pieces of legislation that nobody can read, and they say, XYZ agency, it's your job to promulgate rules for this matter. And I think Congress needs to be aware of that. I think that would probably solve many of their problems, many of the meetings that they have every day. Other associations is that they just abdicate the power to these alphabet soup agencies. So I think that's spot on. And as Michael pointed out, there's still a lot to go. There's still other hurdles that we're going to go through over the next few months, next few years. A lot of things to figure out. But yesterday was a good day, and we should celebrate. That's the main thing. So.
Yeah, great point there. And I got a text message from Congressman Muser, who's the co-chair of our Congressional Cigar Caucus. Congratulations. He was going to go have a premium cigar in celebration for this victory. And that's one of the main reasons why we stay engaged with the Congressional Cigar Caucus. It keeps growing. It's bicameral now. We've got it, bipartisan. It's incredibly important because as you just talked about, they want to make sure that they can, in fact, be the gatekeepers of this, because it's their responsibility. And I can tell you, in the Congressional Cigar Caucus, especially the event we just had a few weeks ago with Carlito Fuente, and it was a fantastic roundtable, an event that we had. They're all very much dialed into this. They love the product, they love the industry, but also they understand that if there's going to be a reason to come in and have incredibly onerous regulation on an industry, there has to be justification. And as Michael eloquently both argued before the court and just now laid out, there is absolutely none, and there's no evidence. And I think we can all be very grateful that Judge Mehta was so absolutely fastidious with the way that he went through everything procedurally and information wise and everything else to deliver the right verdict on all of this and make the right decision to vacate it completely. Michael, quite frankly, just based upon all of your intellect and talent that you put, I think you made his job quite easy, and that's, indicative of the fact, again, you're batting 1,000 there. But for me, from my perspective, is the executive director of the association, getting to see all sides of all of this. I can just tell everybody here that hasn't had the opportunity that I have had to be able to be in all these calls and meetings with everybody from the PCA side, the CRA side, with Michael and his associates at the law firms, and also our team here putting together, information and submitting and comments and everything else. An incredible team victory here for all of this. And just absolute, we should all be feeling an immense amount of pride and gratitude because this industry we love so much, we now know has a great path towards growth and a great path towards success and sustainable, perpetual. And that's really what we want. And we wanted to have a direct decision like this, because if we can get a stabilized economy for this industry, now we have opportunities to innovate. Now we have opportunities to grow. We have opportunities to be able to create new and better experiences. And that's what this decision has provided to us. So, Michael, it's been a tremendous pleasure up until now. I know that this is not the end, but I mean, this is just a great sort of benchmark in terms of all of this. But it's been a tremendous pleasure for me to be able to have worked alongside you to kind of, again, see your expertise in action and have appreciated that. And then also, again, PCA, CRA boards, it's been a tremendous pleasure working with everybody in order to get us to this point.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. And, I think, again, I want to thank the leadership of the PCA at the staff and the board level that, persevered through the whole 7 years of this case. Again, it was not obvious to keep investing in it and keep fighting, but, these guys, said we had to do it, and they were there every step of the way. And that's why we were able to achieve this outcome. The other thing is that, we can't, I'm an okay lawyer, but I mean, I can't turn water into wine, right? This is an industry that was a responsible industry and presented great facts for this case, and was putting out a product that it was not what the public health groups and the FDA said it was, right? And again, it's just that kind of responsible stewardship of the stores and the manufacturers that have put us in a position today where we could make this argument and win it.
Well, I really appreciate you taking some time today, Michael and Greg. Again, I'm going to probably go home and have another celebratory cigar. This has been just a sort of a tremendous week in terms of how we celebrate this. I hope everybody that is involved in this industry, particularly the PCA retail members right now, have felt a big weight off the shoulders and understanding that all the great new products that fill your shelves, that excite your customers. I hope you pass that excitement on to your customers and let them know that there's so much, just such great things are coming down the pike now. And we don't have to be looking over our shoulder on this particular FDA regulation coming down. But then also, again, a call to not get complacent either. So let's celebrate, but let's use this as gasoline to fuel this engine to keep pushing forward. I've seen some comments here about the New York tax. We are going to continue to go forward. We had an unprecedented year this year in terms of tax caps that were passed, cigar bar bills that were passed, and we are not letting off the gas. Vision 50 is a reality. We're going to continue our decade of action of positive legislation. And the great thing is that this decision is going to help fuel this. We have data, we have precedent now to go to these state legislatures to continue to advance our narrative. And so on that front, I would like to say thank you to both of you. I hope everybody has a phenomenal weekend with great cigars and great friends. And Michael, Greg, I hope you both have a fantastic Friday afternoon and a weekend as well.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.